Hello, welcome to CEO Insights, the Living Organization podcast with Vitaly Gimin. With me is Scott Omelianuk. I just pronounced his Ukrainian name. Scott, welcome.
My pleasure, Vitaly. Thanks so much for having me.
We've already been chatting. So Scott has a phenomenal background, being a former editor of the Inc. magazine and many other media companies, and now he has a new venture. Scott, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us about a little bit about your background and what you're doing now?
Sure. I'm going to say I'm Scott O, because that's the easiest. And I have a long time media career in New York, and first in magazines, and then websites and television. I've worked at all of the big publishing houses or written stories for the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, Condé Nast, Hearst. I've been editor-in-chief of a couple of brands at Time Inc., and now most recently, which I just departed from, Inc. Business Media, which tracks the Inc. 5000, which is the 5,000 fastest growing private companies in the country. And that was a remarkable experience. And I think it sort of piqued my entrepreneurial curiosity. And so as media has continued to come under pressure, I decided it was time for a change. And I've launched essentially short story creative agency with a colleague that we think helps clients and consumers meet in a meaningful exchange. The sort of longer version of that at Baby Robot Studios is the name of the company. Babyrobot.co is the website that we align brands and brand purpose, and then use that to create experiences, to create content, to create products that can build sort of a lasting community between consumers and companies. And we think we can do that really effectively.
I bet you can, because I mean, honestly, I mean, with your understanding, or because you have such a deep understanding of what it takes for entrepreneurship, and your editorial skills. The reason I'm excited, is because I recognize in the living organization. Sorry, this way, is the story, particularly for a company that maybe not so well known, right? Because there's a lot of company well known, and they're superstars. They don't need a story. But there are a lot of company, mom and pop companies, that they're not visible to the in the community, right? They might be visible in a very local community. When they try to spread, nobody knows them. They don't have a brand, and so with having someone who can guide them how to create that story and how to get it out there to the public, I think it's like an invaluable service.
It's incredibly important. So this is something we didn't talk about earlier, but I think is important, is that, the gray matter that we use actually to judge and value companies is the same gray matter that we use to judge personal relationships, right? Like they've done functional MRIs to show this, that the brain likes to use shortcuts, right? It likes to be economical. And companies haven't existed long enough for us to develop different neurology for just judging them. And this is why in the early days of Facebook, liking or friending a company was so successful, because we think about companies in the same way we do people. And yet too many companies forget that. So we forget the narrative, we forget the story, we forget that people want to actually interact with people, or people who are stand-ins for companies, not really the companies themselves. And so you're right, that story is so important, and getting it right is really important. And I would say it's true, a lot of big companies don't need their story until they do, right? So I worked for Time Inc., world's largest publisher. Time Inc. doesn't exist anymore. Kodak, right? World's largest photographic company, still exists, but not in any way, because they lost the thread, right? This was a company, for example, that didn't realize its story was helping consumers capture memories. They thought they were a company about printing pictures and the chemicals for developing film. They actually invented the CCD, right? The charge coupling device that is in every camera, and they put it on the shelf and didn't care about it because they lost their story. So I think even big companies need their story Maybe their momentum makes it less necessary until consumer behavior or technology changes. And then suddenly they need it every bit as much as smaller companies, which I also think can benefit tremendously from understanding what they do, the reason they exist, I guess I would say.
Mhm.
And that's often a different thing than the product you make or the service you offer. And so knowing that story is important. I did an exercise with a group of a team, the leadership team of a fractional CFO firm. And you would think when you asked them what they did, and they talked about keeping the books and strategy and tax advice, I went and talked to their clients, and it was a very different thing. What they did for their clients was create a sense of control. They created a sense of ability to plan for the future. They gave them an understanding of the strategy to pursue in the future. By the end of that workshop, by the way, there were a half a dozen CPAs and CFOs in the room on that leadership team, and they were all crying because they didn't realize the more Maslowian, that emotional impact they were making for their clients, right? Yes, the accounting was necessary. Yes, the tax preparation was necessary, but it was everything that wasn't that, which, by the way, AI could do very easily at
Yeah.
some point, that mattered. And so I think, and at Baby Robot, we try to start from a place of like, how do we understand this brand and what it really means to people? Because I think if you can do that in a person-to-person way, uh, you can be so much more successful.
Yeah, thank you for that. I mean, you're literally affirming everything we talk about in the living. I keep trying to point out this. Oh,
There you go.
it's a tricky because you have to do dexterity. That the product is important. I mean, you have to have a great product because but the experience of the product and the story around the product is that's what's going to give you the exponential factor for your service, right?
Absolutely, because the fact is, someone else can make your product. You can be the best nail maker in the world, and that's great until someone invents the screw. And the screw can be great until someone invents super glue or what have you. Like the fact is, none of us exist in a static environment. The world may have never moved faster than it is at just this moment.
Yeah.
And it's never going to move slower than it is right now. And that means consumer behavior change, technology change, go to market change. All of these things are happening. So to have an understanding of your story and your ability and what your real core strength is as a company, and again, that might not necessarily be not what comes off the assembly line, but the problem what comes off the assembly line solves,
Hmm.
is really important, because the day the consumer turns your back on photographs in a physical album, you've got no business, right?
Yeah.
But if leaned into the digital camera sensor, you would still have your business.
Absolutely. This is Scott. I really appreciate. First of all, I wish you really good luck with this new venture because
Thank you.
I think you've got the foundations correct. And that came from 30, 40 years of in the business, helping some of the top businesses. And I hope my audience actually connect with you and listen to that, because one of the foundational skills we teach in the living organization, leadership skill, it's not a technical skill, is story making and community building. Those two, the story making, community building, is what the future of leadership is, right? And companies like yours can really support then those engineering product minded leaders I have an MBA, right? And we were never taught story making, right?
Right.
We were taught
No,
ratio analysis. So
and it's maybe at that moment not fundamental to what you do, but eventually it becomes so. And so just the idea of being open to it as you teach in the living organization, right? Like just like that is just being open to the possibility. I think in the environment in which you operate in now gives every business leader the opportunity to continue living, right? Like the living
right.
organization continuing to live, because there are so many forces that are trying to keep it down.
Yes. Yeah, you're absolutely correct. Now, in today's environment with geopolitical pressure and recession, high competition, almost every product, saturated markets, right? If you don't take this advantage of the story or differentiating your product as a living brand, as a story, right? Then you're going to have phenomenal difficulty. So I appreciate it, and we're going to have you back. I think we'll talk more about what is it going to take to build that story and how your company can actually help. But thank you so much, Scott. Appreciate it.